For the 14th time in franchise history, the Knicks, they're a 50-win ball club. Wasn't easy. Today wasn't easy. I thought it would be a little bit easier, but I should know better. This team doesn't necessarily make it easy, but it was fun to watch for sure. So 14th time, as I mentioned, in franchise history to get to the 50-win plateau. They're going to be the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. It's the first time since the 12-13 season that they got to 50 wins. And I just think that number matters. I think it matters based on the ups and the downs. We've talked about the roller coaster of this season. 29-17 was the record when Randle and Anunoby got hurt in January the 27th. And the team figured out a way to go 21-15 in the next 36 games to get to the 50-win mark. So many big picture things I want to get to. So many smaller picture things regarding this game. But I think we need to, as a collective fan base, as you know, for many of us, me included, have been watching this team for many, many years now. 50 wins and the number 2 seed based on what we thought the team was going to be. And that changed. And that's part of the roller coaster. It changed many times throughout the year in terms of the early season ball club, the team after the trade, the team that ran roughshod over the NBA in January, the team with all the injuries, and then the team that's figured out a way now with some health and with some clarity regarding Julius Randle. And I think that matters, and I want to get to that in a little bit. I think they now are at a place where things are coming together. And I know, look, I don't know what was going on with the turnovers today. I thought the Bulls themselves, I mean, look, a lot of that's Alex Caruso. What do you have, 5 or 6 steals on the night, on the afternoon? He was incredibly aggressive. The Bulls made timely shot after timely shot. Credit to them. They have a lot of good shot makers, and their shot makers made some plays down the stretch and throughout this ball game to make this tough. I mean, the Knicks were able to pull this one out, but credit to the Bulls. They're going to be obviously in the playoffs. They'll be in the 9-10 matchup against the Hawks. It's a good team. It's a team that gives the Knicks some trouble. I thought Caruso, yes, Brunson ended up scoring a lot of points, but clearly he put his will and his grit, his imprint onto this game. But you step back for a second, and I talked about 21-15 since the Randle injury, and of course Anunoby going out, and then the extended absence for him. And it is such, and the way they do it, and the evolution started almost immediately in terms of like how they were going to go about their business. But as the season moved along, and as Jalen Brunson got more comfortable, he got more comfortable with being the focus of the offense. And now he's gotten to the point where if you're putting 2 on the ball, the Knicks are going to get a good shot. They're not going to make them all, but they are going to get a good shot. And now you have a spacing situation that is going to make putting 2 on the ball much tougher. I think Josh Hart has gotten more comfortable as the outlet pass to make plays. Obviously, Hartenstein has been fantastic in that role, taking advantage of some of those 4-on-3s that Jalen Brunson is creating. But that evolution as the season has moved along here in terms of how they're operating offensively is a testament to the IQ, the collective IQ of this ball club, and to the head coach and the coaching staff for trying to figure out a way to help this offense produce a top 10 level of production, despite the fact there is one elite playmaker, ball handler, scorer on this team. That's Jalen Brunson, and a lot of good players. But when you have a guy like Jalen Brunson, the Knicks within a season, and that to me speaks to the absolute high IQ of this ball club to be able to adjust in season with limited practice and figure out a way around Jalen Brunson to create a legitimately excellent offense. And this is going to be a bear of a team in the playoffs. And I know there is, I saw it on Twitter and the KFS chat, like there was a legitimate argument, and it's valid, and I understand it, regarding where did you want the Knicks to be? Did you want them to lose this game and go down to 3-6 and play Indiana? as opposed to what happened, which is the 2 seed, and now you're playing the winner of the Heat and the 76ers. And I completely understand that sentiment. If you are basing it strictly on the opponent, I think that is the absolute right way of going about this, because I don't think you can make a great argument that in terms of the first round matchup, at least, that the Knicks would be better off in the 2 based on playing the Heat or the 76ers with the possibility of either getting, the boogeyman in the Miami Heat or one of the top 15 offensive players the game's ever seen, and guy having a per minute basis one of the greatest scoring seasons in the history of the NBA, and Joel Embiid. So I completely understand that. With that said, I wanted 50. I wanted number 2. I wanted 50 wins. And I wanted that number 2 seed. And there was no doubt in my mind that Tibbs and this team, that they were not going to go for that. Tibbs talked about playing through the finish line, and that's exactly what they did tonight. I don't know how many minutes DiVincenzo ended up finishing with, but it was over 50 for the first time in his career. Credit to him for continually, and listen, this is for a guy like him who's moving without the ball and completely blowing things up on the defensive end off the ball in terms of his ability as a rotation player and just getting in there, getting steals. Like, it's a hard 50 minutes for him. So credit to him for obviously being there. I guess we should talk about, what we saw today, just to sort of put a bow on, because this is the last regular season game. And I was thinking the other day of how enjoyable this season has been, and just watching these games. And I talked about where this team started, where they are right now, and how fun that's been as someone who's really dives into the X's and O's and trying to figure out how this team's going to, without Randle, figure out a way to be a good offense, and watching them do it. It's been a complete joy. And I enjoy regular season basketball. And while, I obviously watch every playoff game, I don't necessarily think I enjoy them in terms of the stress and the agita and the type of, ball the Knicks play. I mean, things are tight. Things can get a little, as they did today with the late game turnovers. The Knicks don't play a type of basketball that's going to provide a lot of stress-free moments. And I am completely setting the expectations that I'm going to be stressed out more times than not in the playoffs. But you obviously want those games. But I thought this regular season game, I'm going to try to enjoy it because, with the stakes being obviously lower, and you just are just watching your favorite team you've been rooting for many years. It's a fun thing. So I do want to give the game its due, which is, the Knicks pulling out a victory, a late game victory, an overtime victory against the Bulls. And I do want to shout out a couple of players that may get lost in the talk today. I thought Bojan Bogdanovic in the fourth quarter made 6 incredibly big points. That one pull-up 3 that got them, I don't know if it tied the game or got them within a bucket or two, completely huge. I thought his minutes in the fourth quarter were big. I don't necessarily think the Knicks win the game or get to overtime without those points in that moment. And I thought the other guy that I do want to just make mention of, so Hartenstein gets to the 30-minute mark before the overtime starts. So the Knicks pull him because he's still going to be at that minutes threshold. They're not going to want to push him beyond that. So Achua starts the overtime. Now, I don't know what the deal with Mitchell Robinson was or is necessarily. I think this probably, and we'll maybe get some clarity. And Kev, I know you're producing the festivities today. So just let me know if there's any Robinson injury stuff, or this is strictly a matchup thing, which is sort of where my head is at right now regarding the Bulls going very small without Vucevic in the game, and maybe not the right matchup for Robinson. And obviously you want to keep him away from Vucevic has given him problems since for years now. So it could have been just a matchup situation regarding Achua playing more the backup 5 in the second half. But I thought Achua in the overtime period, he had 2 stops at the rim, had the putback, and that, listen, DeRozan is going to make that shot at the end more times than not, probably. But if you watch that game, I mean, how many times did the Knicks reach in and get a foul call when DeRozan or Kobe White would go to their low pickup where you're trying to extend the ball low, try to get a reach in and an N1. Well, Achua, I thought, did a great job of just keeping his hands high, they always say, show your hands. So you want the referee to know you are not trying to dig down. I thought he did a good job of keeping DeRozan off the line in that moment and try to make him make a shot over the top. DeRozan missed a shot again, completely makeable look, a shot he makes, as I said, probably more times than not. But I thought Achua not getting called for that foul was massive there, and his minutes were obviously very important to help the Knicks pull this one out. The big story, of course, and listen, this is like this in most games where the Knicks are going to play and the Knicks are going to win. They're going to do it behind Jalen Brunson, who again got to the 40-point mark. It was not the most efficient performance, although he did 40 points on 30 shots. Didn't start great. He really had a lot of trouble finishing in the paint against the Bulls early in this game. Turned that around. Only made 1 3, but got to the line 12 times, made 11 of them. 13 of 26 from 2-point range. Again, the turnovers had 4 of them, which is uncharacteristic for him. Of course, that is many more than we're accustomed to him having. But again, you got to sometimes credit the defense. And I thought the Bulls, in most of the occasions, sort of forced the Knicks into these turnovers. Obviously, the Josh Hart turnover late in the game, where he was, the Knicks had the lead and he was trying to kick it out to DiVincenzo in the right corners. It looked like he kind of lost the handle of the ball, turned it over. So obviously the turnovers were a big issue for the Knicks. But, and we talk about the word inevitability with Jalen Brunson, and I don't know if there's any other better way to define it, to the point where he's scoring 40 and it kind of feels just like a ho-hum performance for him. And it kind of has been over the past several weeks. If you look at his, the per game averages and just what he's able to do on a night-to-night basis. An absolute monster offensively. He is, I think, it just seems like the narrative is getting to the point where I think he's probably a favorite to be first team All-NBA. He's got to get many votes in the MVP. Maybe he finishes 5th or 4th, depending on where, the votes go. But he has just had one of the great regular seasons in the history of the New York Knicks franchise. One of the, there's probably going to be, you're only going to come up with several other seasons offensively where you can look at the Knicks history and think a guy outperformed Jalen Brunson in terms of what Jalen's done this season. Of course, as I mentioned, kind of start this program, so much of it done without Julius Randle, who, let's not forget, was able to produce a lot of easier offense for Jalen, especially in the catch and shoot department, where Randle obviously has the gravity, the post up ability, and has gotten really good at spraying the ball out. And one of Brunson's great skills is his ability to relocate along the 3-point line. So you lose that. So you lose some of the easy offense. And there was a point in, as the Knicks in like February were trying to figure it out, there was a point where it was, at least for me, I was worried that we were going to see either Jalen go to a point where he's going to, start struggling in the efficiency department or wear down a little bit. And again, credit to the Knicks for operating in a way where you're adding more elements to their offense in season. Again, it is very rare for a team to have the evolution offensively in terms of their, the X's and O's, the strategy, the things you're trying to operate, as drastically as the Knicks have changed from where they were to begin the year. And you change a little bit when you make the trade. That's going to change things. And then you have the injuries, and you have to completely almost not start from scratch, but you're having to figure out a way to add elements to make offense easier because you don't have the built-in gravitational force that Julius Randle is. So you have to figure out a way to sort of make that manufacture offense based on that. And it seemed like every game the Knicks would add a little bit. It was a Pacer game early when the Knicks had just the injuries that just happened. We're only talking about a couple of weeks after the injuries, and the first play is Brunson running a floppy action where it's an action I had not seen Jalen Brunson or any Knick really run in the Tibbs era, and they start the game with that to get Brunson to his left hand. He finishes. Actually, it might have been against the Grizzlies sort of early on, if I can remember the play correctly. But it was an early indication that the team was going to start expanding where this offense was going to try to generate points from. And then you have the Hartenstein parts of this, and you can't talk about Jalen Brunson's performance as a player and not sort of link him, in my mind, to Hartenstein, because I don't think Jalen is gonna. He's as good as he is. He's gonna score. He's gonna perform. He's gonna put up points. But I think he needed someone to make things easier for him, and it was the I think the Hartenstein pairing, to where you now have a guy to where if they put two on the ball, that ball's going to now either go to the outlet, which is going to be typically Josh Hart to try to make a play, or it's going to go to the short roll, and that's Hartenstein to try to make a play with an advantage. And remember the Laker game early on when the Knicks didn't have, obviously it was Achua playing the power forward. You had the Lakers were easily set up to sort of take away Brunson by putting two on the ball late in that game. The Knicks didn't have an answer based on the lack of shooting, based on the fact they really hadn't developed an opportunity to really take advantage of that in the two-man game. But that is completely changed now. Now the Knicks can consistently get good offense if the teams are going to put two on the ball, to the point where I don't know if it's a sound strategy. And I think with Brunson, you're going to have to, if you're trying to think of this, like, how do you defend him? I think varying coverages is probably your best way. But to me, I think he's gotten to the point where putting two on the ball, and the Knicks ancillary pieces have gotten to the point where if they put two on the ball, he's going to make the quick pass, get the ball out, and now you can play with an advantage. And that's the thing that Tibbs has always talked about. It's not just trusting the pass, which is something that, that is a tenet of this head coach. But I think the other part of it is like, trust the pass, but do it quickly, because the quicker you can get that ball out, then the defense is going to be in rotation. You're going to keep them there. And then at that point, you're just getting to the paint and you're trying to win the closeout game, which I thought the Knicks did pretty well in this game. Based on how the Bulls were covering Brunson. A lot of it was just Caruso trying to battle his way. A lot of it was putting two on the ball, and the Knicks, I thought, did a good job of making the Bulls pay. And that's just been a big thing, and something the Knicks are going to have to continue as teams are going to try to figure out how to play Brunson. Now, we are going to, I'm sure, get a lot of questions based on the potential matchup against the 76ers or the Heat. Listen, we're going to have a while to sort of dissect the potential matchup between the one of those two ball clubs. But I think both of them are obviously going to present problems on their on either side of the ball. They're good teams. They're well coached. It's going to be a battle regardless. I think the Knicks, and I thought the Pacers were going to give the Knicks problems. I think the Knicks are a worthy number 2 seed, but I think there is not a huge gap between 2 and the 8th seed in this conference. I think the Knicks should be favored, obviously, in the first round and potentially in the second round until they get to the hopefully they get to the Celtics or whomever they play in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Knicks deserve to be favored in those series, but I do not think that the Knicks are going to go in there as overwhelming favorites. I think every one of these teams, maybe Hawks and Bulls, put them aside here for a minute, despite the Bulls playing the Knicks really well today. I think every other one of these teams, including the Magic, depending, obviously that would be things would have to go completely sideways for the Knicks to play the Magic in the playoffs. But I think that every one of these teams, especially the Heat and the 76ers, they have ways to sort of make things hard for the Knicks. Before we sort of move on to some of the out of town scoreboards and get to some of these games, which, NBA did a great job of getting the Eastern Conference in the 1:00 bracket. And then you have the 3:30 West games tipping off here. It was April 4th that we got the news that Julius Randle was going to miss the season. And I'm sure, maybe the players knew things were not looking good as we headed into that date before we got the official news on that. But I think, to me, that was an important part of this season, because I think if you're the Knicks and you're assuming that Julius Randle is going to come back here, I think it's hard not to sort of, I don't know. Listen, I don't think it's a preparation thing. I think you, as a coaching staff, as a team, you're always looking over your shoulder, like, is this the day that Julius ramps it up and he gets to the point where he's going to come back, and you can sort of make make it seem in your head that you're going to get Julius Randle back, and how much is he going to change things? Obviously, he would change things drastically. There's so many things that you would have to change and revert back to if Julius Randle was going to return. But we got that tweet that he was not going to come back. The Knicks went 5-1 since that, or 6-1. Kev, you want to look that up for me? I think it's 5-1. But it might be 6-1 since the Randall news. Let me get that I can probably pull that up here. But I think it's like an important part of the season, because I think the team needed that clarity that they weren't going to get Julius Randle back, and it was so they beat the Kings, they lose to the Bulls, and then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wins after that. So 6-1 after the Julius Randle news that he was going to miss the rest of the season. And I don't think it's coincidental the team went 6-1 since that injury news and that clarity. I think it's an important part of this season. We all wanted Julius to come back. I think most of us did. I think if you're a unbiased basketball fan of this team, I think you can admit, even if you're not the biggest Julius Randle fan, that the ceiling of this team is probably a little bit higher if Randle was going to come back. But the fact that it was clear that he wasn't, I think that probably crystallized things for this team and for a coaching staff that can maybe hone in on what this team is doing, knowing that they're not going to have to figure out a way to get Julius back into the mix before the playoffs and the adjustment that would present itself. So I think it's an important part here that we got the clarity on Julius. It wasn't the news we all wanted, but I think it was important for this team prior to the playoffs, with a couple of weeks before the playoffs, to get that news and then go 6-1 since then and beat good teams, beat the Bucks, beat the Celtics, obviously. And the Bulls are, a playing team here that you beat. And I think that's 6-1 to get to 21-15 after the injuries, to get to 50 wins, and to get to the number 2 seed. I think it was important to do it. I get the argument that they were better off at the 3-6. I think the Pacers do a lot of things that can make life very hard for the Knicks, and I wasn't loving that matchup either. But now you get your home court into the Eastern Conference Finals. I think that matters. I think it's a big deal. I think it's a big deal to get to 50 wins. It's the first time, as I mentioned, since 12-13. They were the number 2 seed that year. So it's been a while. 14th time in their franchise history to get to 50 wins. There was a point in the 90s where 50 wins was your floor. And that was, I know a lot of you watching or listening, you weren't around, you weren't alive, you don't remember those years, but there was an expectation in the 90s that they were going to win 50 plus games, get a 2 or a 3 seed, and compete for an Eastern Conference Finals, potentially get to the finals every single year. That obviously has not been the case for years now, but I think I can confidently say that with this group, with this superstar, and this head coach, and the synergy with the front office, I think this team is set up for a run here where the expectation should be 50 wins for the next 2-3 years. Potentially pushing past that if you could figure out a way to improve this team. But I think the floor, if no other changes are made, with who they have leading this ball club and Jalen Brunson, the floor should be 50 wins. And I think there's a potential here to go back to the expectations of those 90s teams led by Patrick Ewing, where 50 wins was the floor, was the expectation. And winning rounds in the playoffs and trying to compete for a championship year after year was the expectation. And I think that this team, this franchise, is pushing themselves into a category here where I think you can expect that over this next several years as this core hopefully can stay together.